Have everybody getting in. Let's get everybody logged in and let's have a discussion. A lot going on. Should be getting some people in. I'm gonna get logged in here so I can see your guys' chat. And we're gonna have a discussion about some ASICs today. Make sure you guys can hear me. I got the video piped in from here so you guys will be able to see some of that. All of our good OPSEC there ahead. Not. This is kind of the pre-show. I was still setting up. We were running a little behind, but figure we'll just get set up in here so you guys can. We are on Twitch also. Should be live on Twitch.
Yep, I just linked it in the chat.
Okay. 139 watching. I'm gonna make sure I get all of this stuff here. Copy that out to on Notepad. Still my notepads that I'm using to not forget anything. Actually, I got all of this stuff all backed up. Don't need any of this. You guys can go back and see all the notes that I have. You can keep that's the one we want. All right. Normally, I try to get all that done before we start a live stream, but that's what it is. It's kind of early, had an early morning, a lot of meeting stuff, and figured we would go ahead and do this live stream early versus doing a late one for you guys. And we're gonna have there's so much. So most people that have seen some of our last few videos see that the videos that I have are the email amount that I have is pretty substantial. I mean, we get about 13. I'm at the point now getting about 1,300 emails a day, just on bitsbetrippin@gmail.com, and it ranges from a whole different bunch of stuff. And I pull those in. I try to pull some of those into Access, and I parse them out to see, is this somebody asking me a question? Is this something I can answer really quick? Some of the folks that actually send us content, I do try to get back to you guys. There's some people probably in the audience here that's received an email from us before. Answering questions and trying to help you out, you know, really trying to pay it forward, figuring that if you figured out on how to fix an issue, that you're going to show a friend or somebody like that, and that's how the community's grown. But now it's getting to the point, it was about 200 emails, 100 emails, something like that average a day, and now it's over 1,300. And what I'm seeing is, from that level of data that comes into us, a lot of questions are coming around ASICs, especially with some of the other YouTubers getting, you know, one ASIC at a time and then just testing it out for people. And people are like, hey, this is killing profitability on specific coins. Is there going to be ASICs for a whole bunch of other coins? So I wanted to have a video that was not going to be really long, and let's go ahead and have a discussion around ASICs. What does it look like for 2018 in that kind of realm? Some of the feedback that we got from CES 2016 and the North American Bitcoin Conference. really was around the ASIC community and folks that are buying ASICs and companies that are building ASICs. And then what's that spell for like GPU mining? And where does GPU mining go in 2018 with ASICs? A lot of it starting to show some remnants of like what was going on around this time in 2013 into 2014 as ASICs started entering the scene, and pretty much every algorithm that was available then, which was essentially 3 big algorithms back then in 2014, which was, you know, obviously SHA-256, Script, and X11. And X11 really was the GPU algorithm that everybody was moving to, and then you started having X13, X15. You know, ASICs really predominantly taking over all SHA-256 and Script activity. We're starting to see that now with some of the other, you know, cryptocurrency algorithms, especially as of late. So we're going to go through kind of the punch list of the ones that we know are known knowns. How do we see if an ASIC is entering a market? You know, what's our best indicator if it hasn't been announced, or if it's just FUD that somebody's saying that they're going to build a company to build an ASIC? When do we get the indicator? How can you as an individual identify when that activity is taking place? Because as we've seen over the years, over the 9 years of just proof of work in general, when there is a change, like an ASIC or somebody that's built a specific piece of hardware for an algorithm, there's a noticeable increase in difficulty. There's a noticeable increase in hash power. It's something that you just can't hide. Now, to be tactical and not very profitable for a company that is trying to hide an ASIC, they can fork or spin up their own private version of a coin. So I'm going to get right into it. Let's look at the potential. I would call it the digital arms race when you're building something like an ASIC. You're going to put the R&D dollars into it. If you're trying to hide that activity from a competitor in that space, you're going to spin up a fork of a coin. You're going to create your own sub-network internally, and then you're going to start testing it on that. Now, that's a very non-cost-effective approach, but it's also a competitive advantage to where you can make sure that that chipset is shook out and performing the way you want it without having an impact on the public network. Now, obviously, participating on the public network gives a company direct, immediate returns on their investment. So the second those things are hard-pressed and they think that they're good to go, they test them maybe on the test net for a couple hours, and then immediately they're going to want to, the investor side of the company are going to want those onto the main net because they are participating and they're getting compensated in the currency to get some of that return back, and they're getting it early because they haven't had to sell them yet. But I'm seeing more and more with just looking at the hash power when orders, essentially like when you take something like a BITMAIN A3 that just came out, and it's obvious that there's a production cycle on that. Somebody had to create them, they had to test it, but there wasn't a huge ramp of all of those available units hitting the network, because we can see that. That's essentially getting rid of the fog of war, essentially, on there. The second those things start hitting that scale, if BITMAIN built 2,600 of them, and they flip them all on just to give a test, you're going to see that nearly immediately from just the amount of hash power on a particular pool, if it's a private pool, any of that kind of stuff. So the company is doing a tactful deployment of just taking in, you know, 5%, 10% of current network hash power and kind of giving it a bump, looking like there's more activity, you know, just from GPU miners coming in onto the network, and kind of slow rolling those. That's a hedged bet. That's being able to not play your hand and then put a rig out there on the network for everybody to see. And that's the kind of, not saying that that's the activity that's going out, but as a person that comes from a background in finance, in the way technology works, I can totally see them doing that role. That's the new strategy, right? So if you're trying to beat somebody to market, kind of like what BITMAIN just did essentially to the obelisk miners, proving out their tech, testing their tech out on a test net that's closed, not getting any compensation for that, but validating that it has a good output, and then just bam, slamming it into the market is now the kind of new tactical way. Because what I was going to show you guys is kind of the way you guys can see this activity on a general network is really looking at the coin. So I have it right, kind of here, the main coins right now that just in the last, since December essentially, of getting ASIC hardware, which if an ASIC hardware is a substantial increase, not all ASIC hardwares are created equal to where there's an exponential increase because of the tech. With regards to SIA, Decred, Pascal, and LBRY, it's a substantial increase. Meaning it's a factor of probably up to 10 to 100 times more powerful per watt than a GPU. So like in SIA Coin's case, you know, you're looking at 815 gigahash for a unit. It's about, and you know, if you're, you know, dual mining, let's say with an 8-card 580 rig, and you're getting about 8 gigahash on that, you're getting a, you know, 1 gigahash per card. You know, you're looking at almost 100x increase on that particular example, just to show the example. And that was a lot of the same case with like the way the Bitcoin miners worked, where a full rig like this back in 2012, before the Butterfly Labs jalapenos came out, a rig would put out about 600K, or a full rig would put out just under what a Butterfly Labs jalapeno would put out. And mind you, people back then weren't putting together 6-card rigs. We were putting together 2-card rigs. They were SLI, you know, or cross-fired, you know, 5970s. Sometimes you'd put 3 on there, but there wasn't much more than that then. But the jalapenos came out and they were about a 10x increase. They took you to 8 gigahash, to where you'd be about 800K to 1 gigahash on a full rig, right? So you went from 35 watts versus using, you know, 1200 watts at that time. Where the, you know, the SIA is the same way. SIA coin now, just with the limited release of the BITMAIN pieces, and I got the actual SIA coin stats here so you guys can see the network effect of what an ASIC does, even at a small deployment. Let's bring that up here, to where you can see here just in January, the total network difficulty and hash rate down here. We've had a 9x in, you know, just from January 24th to the 29th. This massive roll-up of a network effect that can occur on the statistics on difficulty. So you have this massive ramp when this comes on. Well, that, I mean, if the previous network hash rate stayed pretty constant at just under a full 1,000 terahash all the way back for the last 2 years, and now you have a 9x increase, you can see how it just essentially sucks the life out of it when it comes to a GPU mining. So that's what I call an exponential increase in ASICs. But what a lot of people don't know is that there are ASICs out there for things like Ethereum. And it's not very apparent that they've been out there, but there's been ASICs out there for Ethereum, but they're not near as efficient. So they're not a exponential increase, not even really a logarithmic increase in technology. So if we just come out here and look here, this is an example of an Ethereum miner that has been out there since 2016, and it's about 200 megahash. Now, I wouldn't particularly purchase this particular unit from this vendor. That wasn't the point here to show you. We have no affiliation with this person, but just looking at these AM200 Ethereum miners, they've been out there for a while. But the deal is that they're not a significant increase in current performance comparable to like a GPU mining rig, to where you're getting about what, 230 megahash, and who knows if this price is current. There's probably a good chance if you were trying to order this thing, they would probably be bumping you up the prices because they're trying to compete with GPUs right now. But you're looking at about 1,350 watts for 230 megahash. So the wattage and the power and all that's not that much. There's no huge difference between this and this ASIC. And then the fact that you can, the GPUs have other purposes is a real big sell point on still using GPUs. So not all ASICs are created equal, and not all technology scales correctly when you look at trying to dedicate a processor. Now, the reason why these AM200s and any other kind of ASIC miners for Ethereum hasn't taken off, obviously, is because this only mines Ethash, and some of them mine the Ethereum Dagger, Hashimo, and some of them also do Equihash, so they'll do sols per second also output. But you're essentially stuck with that piece of equipment with those two algorithms, where this stuff, obviously, you can mine pretty much anything. Where it really makes that separation is if it has this huge exponential increase. If this was a 2,000 mega hash output, now you're talking 2 gigahash on Ethereum at 1350 watts. Now you have that balance of what the exponential increase on Ethereum would be. And you'd have a lot more towards that. And there's a whole range of reasons why the ASICs aren't that effective, and a lot of it has to do with the way the memory controller, the memory timings, and certain algorithms being very memory intensive and not so much, ASIC processing intensive. Because now you're running up against pretty much the limitations of the technology when it comes to memory. And you're going to be going directly and competing with graphics cards which have some of this most state-of-the-art memory out there. HBM2, GDDR5, and now soon to be GDDR6 are really going to be your major limiting factors on some of these algorithms if they continue to doing proof of work and not move into that proof of stake eventually. But as we know, Ethereum is going to be a hybrid right away. So, with people really concerned about ASICs coming in and hitting certain algorithms, some of them have already been out there. So I would just say that it's a matter of watching those difficult charts. We can take a look at Decred to show you the same thing of when that hash power really came online with the ASICs and continue to. And we can go here and if we look at the Decred network hash power in the last year and see really as the hash power, and this is not really drawing out the graph for us here for some reason. Let's refresh this. It doesn't like drawing that graph, but essentially, total network hash power, and this was really this change between July, really from May to November of this last year. It stayed pretty constant, and this was really the dual mining that was going on with Ethereum. And then you had a large increase right here at the beginning of January, where you had a pretty steady amount of hash power. This is pretty much all the people's mining rigs that are doing dual mining and stuff. And these little quick spikes to 460, I mean, you had a pretty significant jump there just in a few days to almost a 20% increase, 30% increase. These little peaks here, and then a slamming all the way up to 812. You can already see it's doubled in a matter of a few days. And that is essentially, you can see that actual scale of the ASICs coming online. Now you feel it if you're watching your proceeds and you're watching your rigs output and you're seeing what you're getting, and then you notice and you're looking at your table of what your earning rate is, and then you see it halve one day and you're like, what the hell? That's usually a network target redifficulty, and then your output is going to be less, right? That's just, it's basic math problem that's going on. That's one of your normal net effects of what just happened. And then you can go back and see, okay, why is this big increase that's going out there? But that's one of your biggest indicators to see. And if there is no announcement on an ASIC out there, but there's a more than double network hash power that's just hit the network, there's a high chance that somebody out there has developed something. And that's going to start the speculation, and then enough people get enough kind of run up of what's going on, and then usually something leaks. And somebody says, oh yeah, by the way, just like the announcement today with Bitcoin stuff, another note here we'll bring up on the piece here that Samsung and BITMAIN making an agreement when it comes. Now they predicate this whole entire thing on Bitcoin mining, but as we all know, everybody in the industry correlates any kind of mining of cryptocurrency usually in, say, the tagline Bitcoin. So they're kind of used synonymous, to where when they say, oh, Samsung's going to go into mass producing of ASIC miners, and then you scroll down and look at some of the article here, and they talk about, you know, Bitcoin mining in general, but it's not necessarily all Bitcoin mining, because we know BITMAIN is working with a whole bunch of different algorithms. And then you have a follow-up with companies that have made a statement that they want to get into the mining space and are trying to drum up funds from multiple algorithms, not just the ones that BITMAIN's been targeting, but you have now, this one's been out there since about October, and I don't think they've made it really any progress. They have an intention to try to do this whole 16 GPUs to one ASIC across 10 different algorithms. Easier said than done, but really looking at a, you know, a 520 and 1,000 sol rig, 32 gigs of installed memory, 1,000 watt power supply. Again, this is just numbers on a spreadsheet. Nobody's seen any hardware here, and this is what their kind of target is across the board, which is really about the top. It is the top 10 algorithms out there, right, across all the different currencies, of saying that this Pascal A1 ASIC miner. Now, even if this is just people living in a pipe dream of saying, I want to drum up enough cash flow to build a piece of hardware that will mine all of these, not necessarily at the same time, but you could predicate where you want it to be mined. Even by going through the effort of building this website, mocking up some cool graphics and all that other stuff, kind of starts the trigger to people at BITMAIN and the other competitors to say, you know, well, if somebody's actually going to try to do that, why aren't we trying to do that? So that's kind of in lies the risk, as you create kind of an arms race on these different currencies. And as cryptocurrency starts to really settle in more and more as an accepted form of exchange, of utility, of new feature sets, these algorithms that are the underlying proof of effort or proof of work become a mainstay in cryptocurrency. Like that is how the incentivization works, and that's also how the platform's held up. And let's go build some hardware against it, because as more and more people, more and more investors now are trying to get into GPU farms and ASIC farms and all this, and they start looking at real capital, like I want to invest in this space, I want to invest at the creation side of it, the infrastructure side of it. Those funds, if not fed by the GPUs and GPU farms, will start to make their way into you know, efforts that are trying to build their own hardware, have their own fabrication, make hardware deals. So, you know, is any one of these particular algorithms, as all of them say, they are ASIC resistant, but not ASIC proof. Because technically you could build any kind of technology to facilitate the requirement. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Nobody's ASIC proof. The only ASIC proof you have isn't a piece of technology, it's a strategy. Which means something like what Vertcoin's always said, if somebody's going to try to build an algorithm or an ASIC around their algorithm, they'll just fork the currency to a different algorithm, right? It's a strategy, that's not a technology. Which is fine, and that's fine for Vertcoin to do that. And with other coins using LBRY 2, you know, Revision 2 and NeoScript, and you know, if XMR with Cryptonight, all these things come out, and they're going to have ASICs against them, and they want to change up the algorithm, they have that strategy to be able to do that. So now this Pascal A1 miner, I mean, I've done some research, I try to find it. The bottom line is they've just built this marketing material, they're trying to get it produced, and from my understanding, they don't have any funding towards it. But again, this is that whole thing of, is some of the big vendors actually building hardware for some of these GPU coins? And you know, I've been taking a look at the ETH difficulty and a few of the others, and I mean, it is going up. It's not going up exponentially. We'll bring this up real quick. and what I would say is exponential would be, here's the total difficulty growth rate for Ethereum since the beginning. Exponential would be if you're looking at this number over here and you're seeing it jump from, you know, 2,000 to 3,000, close to 3,000 difficulty to like 12,000, 10,000, you know, like very, very exponential scale. This little bump here was the difficult bomb. This was artificial. That started about right here. It actually started this first little bump right there. So actually, it's the very first little straight line. It happened in May is when that started executing, and then this was artificially pushed up based on code. It was not predicated necessarily on network hash power. The Byzantine release reset that. They dropped the assurance to three coin output every 15 seconds, and then let the network retarget its block time against the network hash power, which then reset it. So at the time, the network hash power that was on Ethereum at the time predicated against 15 seconds what the difficulty was. So that's where you got this little drop where it snapped down there at the end of October, or mid-October, October 18th, when they did that Byzantine release. And then you've had this subtle, you had this kind of float right here where the price didn't really change much, and a lot of people weren't necessarily getting into mining. You were getting into December timeframe, and then you started having this huge exponential growth again. Which is a lot of people, which I mean could be an indication of maybe there is somebody that has an ASIC out there and they've slow rolled it. But a lot of this just from our exposure, from people sending us pictures, people sending us inventory of like what they've done. There's been a lot of graphics card added to the Ethereum network. I mean, just exponential growth. So from a graphics card level, but again, it's pretty. It's almost like a log chart because it's not going up exponentially. It's not jumping up by thousands of terahash. And Ethereum having that focus of going to a proof of stake, proof of work hybrid. I mean, and then unless BITMAIN or any of them want to get into the memory controller business and memory creation business and building their own fabrication plant to go toe to toe with somebody like a Samsung, a Micron, a Hynix, an Elpida. It sounds like they're just signing that deal with Samsung to just build the division, which they could underfund some of that expansion from a fabrication standpoint to have chips specifically fabricated for them, buying a cycle time, to have a guaranteed delivery, that kind of activity. But you know, our biggest limiting factor right here is going to be memory from at least the Ethereum and Zcash standpoint. Zcash a little more towards core, but you know, I wanted to kind of tackle some of this subject because a lot of people ask us. Maybe this wasn't a lot of information for people that already know the space, and it was kind of a big waste of time for you. And I'm sorry for that, but there's a lot of people that ask us questions like, how do I know when an ASIC's coming here? You know, if I haven't seen an announcement. And a lot of that is predicated on the difficulty growth chart. Just because you can, there's no way to hide it, right? If you put something on that's exponentially faster than one of these units, and then it's generating a lot of you have this like big quote unquote farm that looks like it just comes on line, and you see this big bump that starts really logarithmically going up or exponentially going up, then you can kind of tell like, okay, somebody came out with some new hardware, or the production cycle of GPUs just went through the roof, and we're already kind of at max output right now. So that's one of the biggest indicators we look at, not just the information what people say, because not everything that people say happens. Like this Pascal. This came out in October, and you know, this was their target, and it hasn't happened. So not everything that you read there is obviously true. The real truth is when it starts to come online onto the network. So, you know, 2018, you know, part of this was to discuss kind of where things are going at in 2018. There is a substantial amount of money coming into the mining side. Not just from people that are investing, that are personal, just individual contributors pulling together to build mining farms, but in general, the infrastructure from the exposure at CES and at the North American Bitcoin Conference, and looking at people like Hut8, which are main contributors and financiers of Bitfury, which is another Bitcoin ASIC miner, are looking at really ramping up production this year. And that is, what's up?
Barnacles' rating on Twitch.
Barnacles' rating on Twitch. Welcome all the Barnacles folks on Twitch. Be sure to subscribe. And follow. When you
don't have a subscribe button.
Oh, I don't have a subscribe button yet. I'm not cool enough on Twitch yet. So we are starting on the Twitch on the and I don't have the Muxy and I don't have all that kind of stuff. Right now it's just feeding you guys information. And you know, there's no donation things on that or whatever. But yes, there is a ton of interest. Not just interest, there's real capital coming into the infrastructure side. So I know a lot of people are probably freaking out from a GPU side of trying to wonder, well, you know, I'm making an investment. I have an ROI that's set right now because crypto is really down today. You know, what to do, you know, why is crypto down? And I'll talk about it a little bit here in a second of what took this dip today. But in general, where, you know, am I at risk? What's the issue? I would say in 2014, I would be like, oh crap, the sky's falling, because there was no huge infrastructure outlook. There were not massive institutions talking about the infrastructure and the usage of a lot of these utility tokens and the platforms. In this day and age, there's a lot of people that want in and don't want to pay the price. So I think there's a mix of some manipulation, obviously, with the CFTC, the CBOE futures. There's a lot of people that are the news cycle it's like the 24-hour news cycle on steroids when it comes to cryptocurrency. This stuff can change in a second. There's a lot of emotion behind it, and a lot of people have a lot of capital invested in it. So there's this huge like turn cycle that makes a lot of people do a lot of different things with their space. With your GPU rigs, there is a future of all kinds of proportions, not just proof of work. We've essentially had, over the last 9 years, proof of work prove itself out, right? People know that it functions without a leader, without a government, without anybody that's working on Bitcoin, just a collaboration of developers that's changed over time, and it keeps running. And I'm not going to get into a scaling debate because it has nothing to do with this particular, what I'm talking about. You have proof of work in general proving itself out. You've had forks of coins change and add adapt features to proof of work. You've had an expansion of proof of stake, which is staking currency, and hybrid models that are proving out that proof of work still is a very solid, valuable piece. Now, most of that is created essentially what you call the blockchain 1.0, which was essentially value exchange between people, transactions, no third-party involvement, that sort of thing. That's essentially 1.0. You've had platform-based systems, Ethereum, functionality on those platforms to be able to do smart contracts and stuff. That's like a 2.0 model. And you've also had the expansion into the 3.0 model, with a lot of the development still going on with regards to, you know, the Internet of Things, currencies, Cardano, EOS, high-speed transaction, frictionless systems that are platforms that are kind of that next evolution, in addition to, what's up? Oh yeah. In addition to having the staking of your ability to put, like, what am I trying to say here? The actual storage. So you have like Storage Coin, and you have Storage J, and you have Sidecoin. You have these things that are looking at the storage side. So if you take that compute, you take a traditional hybrid cloud type of solution, you have essentially compute, business logic, and storage. We essentially have the storage piece getting vetted out now to where people can really look at doing enterprise class storage, having a very distributed storage model. You know, interplanetary file system really starting to get vetted out with the tokenized enforcement of holding up those networks, right? Using proof of work and proof of stake piece, and then having the business logic layer really being the kind of smart contract layer 2 and layer 3.0 blockchains. So you have the business logic layer and you have the storage layer crashing, waiting for the compute layer. Now this is what Golem and a few of the other cryptocurrencies have tried to tout from a smart contract layer of saying that there's going to be a global compute. But this is that proof of effort I keep continuously talking about. I know that there's people out there working on these things to have a global compute model. And that's really where it leads me full circle back to the GPUs. And why I bring that back to GPUs is this is not really a discussion related to the ASICs, because ASICs are made to do the proof of work, they're made to do the algorithm side, essentially the security of the network, the transaction validation of the network. And in compensation for that, they're compensated in the token. They're just doing it at a more higher scale version because they can process more proofs of work to all shoot for the award of that next block, right? That is the proof of work, what the ASICs are doing. The GPUs have an opportunity. The GPU development right now has an opportunity to not just be part of it as a proof of work, but also to become that level of compute. And what we mean by that, or what I mean by that, is right now you have AWS, you have Azure, you have these farms that are out there with Tesla cores and a lot of effort being put together to do machine deep learning, TensorFlow, these distributed computing models out there right now that you go and rent space from. A CUDA core is a CUDA core is a CUDA core. And we say that in a lot, we say that same kind of thing as development, meaning, Java is Java is Java, JavaScript is Java. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So if there is already compute modeling out there with like TensorFlow and all that, of tying that to a proof of work blockchain algorithm, of having that second layer function on there to handle the compute jobs. Essentially you have that blockchain set in there, an augmentation of a feature set that now can distribute packages of work to the GPU mining rigs, which are going to be using the CUDA core. Now, it's not advantageous for NVIDIA or anybody to have that because there's entire pay models on AWS farms of clusters out there for compute. But as more and more technology starts to move through in 2018, as more demand for compute happens, this is just going to be a part that's going to be filled. And you also have the actual, no kidding, no bullshit, of a lot of people with mining rigs, with a lot of different CUDA cores, a lot of different OpenCL cycles for AMD cards that are out there that aren't necessarily going to be needed on some algorithms to be doing proof of work. So you have this surplus of now compute power that can be augmented by this kind of what I would call blockchain 4.0 tech, which is now bringing in the compute side of the entire equation of a full kind of distributed cloud kind of model. Where now you have the storage for IPFS, you have the business compute layer, which is critical on making functional things happen in code, so that you have your stored procedures, all that kind of cryptic things that need to occur to make the execution of a smart contract happen. That layer is there. It's part of that activity in like the Ethereum EVM, and which will happen in EOS. That stuff's already kind of there. It's being worked through and modeled on trying to better it. And then you also have the platform, which facilitates the transaction between nodes and clients to connect to each other, which is essentially the basis of a blockchain and that distributed ledger of transactions. So you have all the elements almost in place now to then have that global supercomputer. And then you also have the counterparties that are ready and willing to start to buy into that. Meaning you have indie developers that are looking on TensorFlow stuff, that are trying to build new hardware as, small vendors, small businesses that don't have the capital up front to go rent an Amazon, cluster that's $200, $100 per half hour to run on a Tesla, 4U blade, right? To where, you're paying $200 an hour for that machine. If you could do that for $25 an hour, I have no doubt there's tons of miners out there that would not mind a $25 or even a $10 an hour per rig, right, of usage, of sharing in a pool of effort when it comes to that, of actually computational, TensorFlow or any of that kind of stuff. Because that kind of technology already exists in those clusters that are sitting on Amazon. And some of them are maxed out. Like you go to try to rent some of them, and if SpaceX or somebody else is coming out there, so shout out to SpaceX, is trying to use that, you know, they need to offset to run a cluster and, you know, do some computations, and they lock those up, and, you know, and there's none available to purchase, you know, just like if you're looking at a cloud mining type of situation, where all the contracts are gone. The same way it happens with some of these distributed computing models with like Azure and AWS, where you just can't, if you're a developer and you're like, shit, I need to run this compute job and my local farm sucks, you know, I want to be able to run that. So you have people that will build their own localized versions of this with like Tesla cards or Titan Vs, and they'll just, you know, they'll make the $3,000 per card investment, you know, to maybe run it every once in a while. Or they can take $500 of that available capital and just rent it out on a distributed network. So that's where I'm coming through with it from a GPU standpoint. If you're trying to wonder, like, what the hell am I going to do with my GPU mining rig if all these different ASICs are coming out in 2018? And what I'm saying is that this compute model is the next evolution. This is the biggest opportunity cost of people that are doing development. If you're a developer and you're writing these different, you know, oh, I'm going to fork a coin, I'm going to make Bitcoin private, no pun on them, but, you know, smart developers just forking other proof of work coins, it's the next levels, bro. Like, spend that time, let's work this compute model, and let's give indie developers and folks that want to see huge innovation, you know, machine deep learning, AI, expand with global supercomputing through this already sunk cost that all of you guys that have mining rigs have already done. You know, the 1% out there that have mining rigs, you know, and then you'll have those counterparties that are willing to purchase that compute power. So that was really kind of what I wanted to cover today, on giving you guys kind of an insight to where 2018, how to look for ASICs coming online, how to get through the FUD. I'll close it out here, and we'll go no more than an hour. I'm at 41 minutes. I want to close out the rest of this episode, our live stream. I want to answer some questions. I don't know if we've gotten any questions or not that's out there. If anybody has any questions with stuff, and then also talk kind of what's the pullback in the market from what we're seeing. Obviously, it's not nothing groundbreaking. It looks like an announcement from I don't know if that was the CFTC that put out a thing on Tether and Bitfinex from the subpoena and the Bitfinex and Tether folks. But that was like in December of just 6th December. So, I mean, it's been more than a month, and now it's just hitting the news, and there's obviously a pullback a little bit, people freaking out about it. But the fact that it's still operating kind of makes you wonder that, you know, is the fact that the auditors on Tether that recently just announced a breakup and all that, this was all after that subpoena. So I think bottom line, there's a lot still in the back end of the works. We have no idea. We're seeing it like you guys, but when you start to have any kind of government interaction intersects like that, it creates, you know, events that will make people question things. I think it's always a good event. If you're not working in a transparent way, I mean, as transparent as you can in this space, I think eventually your day comes like where you have to like kind of show whatever, right? So that's why I like certain things that, you know, some people don't like Ethereum and the way they do it. I think Ethereum is really good from the fact that they have public dev meetings. You know, there is a misconception of risk when people are disclosing things, and the misconception there is that if I give anybody any insight, or if I give anybody any hook on some cool thing that we're doing, then they're just going to run off and steal my idea. And one thing that this space has really taught, should teach everybody, that is, and this goes in general in life of everything I've really experienced, is you can show everybody the ingredients, you can show everybody the recipe on how to cook something, but not everybody's going to cook, right? And I think that the few that may do it differently. The few that may add a different ingredient, and it builds something different. But you have a much better effect, a net effect, that if you're as transparent as you can be on whatever project you're doing, give regular updates, expose people to what they can, to what the operations is, and you're going to build confidence in what they're doing. And you're also going to get candid feedback, because people are like, what the hell? Why are you doing that? And then you may get this new exposure to information that makes you think about things a little differently too, or maybe some approach. Because if you're closed off and you think, I got the best thing in the world and they're going to love it, and then you go build that, and then they come out with it, and then you're like, oh shit, I didn't think about this, 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 or this, because I never talked to anybody else. So having folks engaged on what you're doing, approach, you know, it bodes for better exposure if you're doing things that could be, I don't want to say controversial, but things that people are just going to speculate the negative on, right? So Benefex and Tether and all this, I mean, it's real super clear that if you go out and claim that you have a dollar for dollar, then it doesn't make sense to hide that. Like, hey, yeah, here's an internal audit. It's a yes or no from a third-party validator, right? Since you're not exposing the actual, you know, bank accounts, obviously for obvious reasons, but having a third-party auditor in that kind of case to say, yeah, that's the way that works. Yeah, that's a validated source. Again, now you can question the third-party auditor, are they in bed or whatever, you know, but because that's the root of the problems with general third-party auditing, or third-party anything, right? And that's why being able to independently verify it is clutch. Having a seed, having, you know, like why people like gambling on cryptocurrency sites that have, you know, the algorithm exposed where you can see, hey man, this is just the way it functions. Here's the RAND function, you know, good luck, you know, versus having the closed door, right? That's what allures people to those type of activities, you know, that that it's just code and it's just math running. You know, it doesn't care. It's not anything to do with religion. It doesn't care about your social status. It doesn't give a crap. It's just math. It's the way the physics work. So I think if you expose, you know, plans and you show kind of what your intentions are, you're going to get a much better feedback. You also maybe get a much better competitor. And competition's good. Competition is what makes you get up in the morning and go, shit, if I don't get up, that other asshole's going to beat me to it, right? It drives competition. I mean, look at anything. Look at the Olympics about to come up. Competition. People out there busting their ass to try to win gold, right? BITMAIN out there, if it was a little more transparent on some of its operations, let the best man win. I mean, I get it, but holding off is also suppressing the innovation in the ASIC world. And I'm not trying to push ASICs, but I'm just saying that the competition's a good natural effect in the human nature, right? So, I don't even know where I was going with this. I'm now just ranting to you guys, but wow, we have almost 400 people on. They like these early streams. You guys like these early streams? I'm not even watching the chat. I'm gonna look at the chat. We'll close this out in the next 10 minutes. Let me see if I can. 3 release is crazy. I missed that stream. Oh, the people are just having normal chats. I didn't bring up the Twitch, but Ravencoin. Yes, we are still mining Ravencoin. A lot of people are giving me shit for that, for shilling it, as per se. But no, it's a new algorithm, Ravencoin. There's only an NVIDIA miner out there right now. There's a good chance there's a couple private miners out there that have probably AMD miners. I'm just making an assumption, mainly because the network hash rate's like more than doubled, and it's by at least a collection of individuals that actually have more than any of the mining pools. I'm looking at putting together a video. What I'm going to do for that one, I'm not going to necessarily do a live stream for that one. I'm going to put together a kind of a produced video on how you can download the wallet for it, and how you can mine it with your NVIDIA mining rig with some configuration, and with your CPU. And then once an AMD miner comes out, we can do a follow-up. But look for that video. If we can get it done today, I started putting together some of it. Then we'll put that together. But here, at least in the next 24 hours, we're going to give you guys probably like a 7-minute video on how to get into it and how to start mining it. Holdall, ASICs or PETA. ASICs push centralization. Yes, they do, because you can get more for less units, and if more people buy those units, then you have more of a nodal type of situation to where you have just nodes of clusters of less individuals mining. But there's a counter argument I hear, at least from the different when's the new Multiminer coming out? The new Multiminer will be out this weekend. I have most of it done, guys. I'm actually testing it. If you follow us on Discord, go out to Discord, and by Friday I usually do a pre-release to everybody out on Discord. I just kind of drop it out there. So look on Discord. We're gonna have the X16 algorithm out there. But back to the ASICs and whole. So there's something to be said for large GPU mining farms too, and that's a kind of a centralization when you look at total network hash power. If you look at somebody like Genesis, and I know Marco, I've met Marco a couple times, and I mean they have huge amounts of GPU power, and that could be considered like the ASIC version of the GPU farms, right? So you have 30% of the Ethereum network, nearly 30%, coming from Genesis, right? That's a huge, I don't want to say centralization, but that's a pretty big centralization. And close to 30%. It might be less now that more and more people have got into it. It might be around more like 26, but they have another farm coming online here. So it works both ways. There's just a lot more individual contributors, and the scaling is not so exponential with GPUs. Like, you could have a couple thousand GPUs come online, and it's just going to go, you know, it's not like, you know, there's 10x on one chip compared to one GPU. When I mean, you can have 100x to one of these, then now it's like having 800 GPUs. And if you have like 4 of those mining rigs, now you're like a farm of GPUs. Like, you're like an entire building equivalent, right? So that's really the scale. But you can definitely get into centralization with GPUs too.
Did you mention about the Multiminer and the updates?
Yeah, somebody asked a super chat question there. I'm going to release the Multiminer. I was actually holding off because there was a couple different updates to some of the. There's probably going to be a new Claymore update, and I hate releasing it, and then Claymore does a freaking release and invalidates the latest version. So I'm looking to see if he's going to have that, and then the X16R mining algorithm, which is what Ravencoin uses. I was going to see if the AMD miner would be finished. I think there's a few people working on that, but it looks like they're not going to have it in by Friday. So I'm just packaging the one that we got out there, and then I'll drop it first out on our Discord before I make an official post and a video. But when we do the update to the Multiminer, and it has some pretty nice updates. It's actually, I've taken in some of the updates that you guys have given us, and to where now all of your personal information with regards to your mining addresses and your actual details into like Supernova and all the other different pools is now separated. That was a contribution from somebody that actually did that. It's separated from the main Multiminer script. So then when we do future updates, you don't have to go back in there and change that information. That's a solid update I think you guys will like. And then I pulled some of the pools out. I pulled some of the different coins that are no longer really GPU mineable. I'm on the debate, and we can ask the question here. You guys tell me right now, do you want me to leave the dual mining in there or just pull it out? Just because, one, it consolidated a lot more. Two, I don't want anybody that doesn't watch that video to start dual mining and just wasting cycles, essentially. But I was going to pull all the Claymore dual mining features out of there, just because there's really no point to wasting your power on your GPUs now for dual mining. So we'll pull that out there, and then pull out. Everybody said pull out. I don't want anybody wasting their time, honestly, their time and their money. So I was going to pull all of the dual mining out of there. Just build a Linux version. There is a Linux version out there. There is a Linux. If you look up BBT Multiminer, if you just Google that, there's still an older Linux version out there that you can go out there and just recompile some of the new miners. But it's got all the SH scripts in there to do all the... Put the dual miner as a separate exe. Yeah, so I'm going to pull out the dual mine. Pull it out. Okay. Yeah, so I don't want to waste people's time. So, and then obviously if we can keep the old bat file in there just in case for some reason you wanted to benchmark on how the performance is, we can put that on there. Save your money, pull out, no kids.
Oh my god.
Nice. Kids are great. Can you talk about mining after Ethereum switches to proof of stake? From Suits TV. So Ethereum, on their initial release of Casper, is going with a proof of stake, proof of work hybrid. So you're still going to be able to mine it. And the initial release, based on the Cornell white paper on it, is claiming 99 blocks will be mined in a row with proof of work, and then one block, the checkpoint block, is going to be a proof of stake block. So you're going to have a very, essentially you'll have like a 1% impact on that first release of Ethereum. Ethereum's proof of stake Casper network, because you're essentially having one block out of 100, which 100 blocks is 1,500 seconds. Okay, so whatever that, I'm not doing the math in my head right now what 1,500 seconds is, but that's if the block time stays at 15 seconds times 100, you know, 1,500 seconds. So whatever the reduction in inflation that's going to be going to the miners is only 1%. 1% of the network would be the initial hit. I haven't seen any other strategies short of doing either a 50-50 or how they're going to do their separation from proof of work to proof of stake on the subsequent releases, because right now they're just focused iteratively with doing the proof of stake checkpoint hybrid model. So whatever those next phases are, if it goes into a 50-50 split, right now for the foreseeable future, Ethereum is going to be a proof of stake, proof of work hybrid when Casper comes out. They still have another release, the second part of Byzantine release, before they go do Casper. And Casper's testnet, right now, from my last time I reviewed it, is still not fully functioning. So proof of stake right now, unless something happens in the next dev meeting to say, hey, we've figured out all of our issues, is still not anytime soon. When is Casper? There's not scheduled right now. Initially, it was going to be here first quarter. The end of first quarter was a notional possibility, but when they forked, or when they did the Byzantine release in October 16th of last year, they moved the difficult bomb 18 months as a minimum set, right? So if they have a solid Casper date, like let's say on this next Byzantine, they're not calling it Byzantine, there's Constantine, I think, release, whatever the next release for Ethereum is, if they have a good awareness of when they want to target Casper, then they have the opportunity to move that difficult bomb of when they want to slow roll the difficult. So that, when I'm talking about the difficult bomb, I'm talking about this. This is the difficult bomb stuff, guys. When they kicked off the difficult bomb right here in May, it did an exponential increase to wean you off of mining. So that those big, huge increases, it just took big bumps and it slow rolled it by large amounts until that jump between September 20th to September 22nd was substantial. And then when they turned it off, it slapped it back down to here to be back network predicated. There is a high chance that in the next Ethereum release, provided they figure out, and I just saw the chat go away, when they find out if they had the testing details from the Casper testnet, and they figure out their stuff and they have confidence in it, that next Ethereum release, which may put in sharding and a few other feature sets, they can go back in and reset the target date of that difficult bomb when they want to slow roll it. And what they would do is they pretty much count back like 3 months, and they say, okay, if our target is August 1st is Casper, then they're going to count that back to like, you know, May. Again, you know, they'll go back to May, or, you know, or April, and say on our next release we'll just reset that date to where the difficult bomb starts, right? But it's a ticking, literally is a ticking time bomb on the network, because when you're not predicated on the hash power is toggles the difficulty to make sure that you hold a block time. So Ethereum's 15-second block time, so that's when it's posting the block time.
The sun has come out and it is like glaring right there on your hands.
I'm given sunshine here. The difficulty is predicated on, you know, it sets the block time. So when that difficulty was artificially being pushed up, the hash power wasn't matching it at the same rate. So the block times started taking longer and longer and longer to post those blocks. There's a net effect to anybody that has dApps that run on that network to that, because some of them are looking for information within each of those blocks, right? So if your service level is set to look at a block every 20 seconds to give yourself 5 seconds afloat, just in case if a block for some reason doesn't get solved in that much time, then you're going to start having service impact on dApps. So it's a catch-22 for the Ethereum team to time their code release for Casper predicated to when they're going to want to slow roll people with the poison pill to move them off of mining, or really reduce mining to where it's just a few contributors out there that are just holding the network up. So none of that's out there right now. Nobody knows when the actual time is, and of course we'll bring it to you guys when we know. And when I usually try to be part of those dev meetings, I listen in, I try to contribute what I can from just free information to the dev team. They actually gave us a shout out on a couple dev meetings ago because I was trying to offer up some just free knowledge on how to manage a team, especially like from a cost schedule performance side, a software release schedule, all that kind of stuff. Having part of my main background is to be able to deliver big projects to teams. So trying to see where I see gaps on that team in the delivery, and I try to just, you know, say, hey, you know, you guys are knocking out of the park on a few of these things, but there's a few, you know, from letting the community know on these particular key variables, you probably need to, you know, do that. And it's not that they weren't wanting to, it was just that they weren't organized to communicate that information. So I sent some stuff over to Hudson, which runs their, essentially is their scrum master in all those dev meetings. And he gave us a shout out for, you know, I'm trying to make a contribution to the team. Can't wait for POS, so I want it sooner. I don't know why you'd want it sooner. Unless you want to move your equipment off of proof of stake. There's a good chance, there's a weird situation to where if that proof of effort stuff and the global compute moves over with another coin, or you know, somebody forks an existing coin and adds that feature set on top of it, you know, if Richard ever finishes CFD coin, that it'll give Ethereum a run for its money when it comes to at least the hash power will just naturally move over, because it'll make more sense from a profitability standpoint for people to start assigning their rigs to something that they're going to get not just a proof of work tokenization, which is, you know, your effort when you put a rig on a network, you're just compensated for, you know, having that effort on there, but having a secondary incentive through a distributed compute model to where you're actually getting paid for the work that the machines are performing, not just proof of work. It's gonna rival, I think, a lot of proof of work setups. Start staking needs, so it does nothing now. All right, guys, I'm about 3 minutes over where I was going to go. It looks like we have 404 people, which is quite a bit of people. I don't know how many we have on Twitch. What was our Twitch numbers?
We're at 89 now, but at one point I think we're at like 250. When Barnacle
Nice. A Barnacle raid, like a boss.
Tell everybody to check out Twitch. We're trying to build our community there and
Render token.
learning a lot of new things. The good things about Twitch is that it seems to be a clearer picture, and the delay is about half of what it is on YouTube.
Oh, really? The Twitch is faster? Go figure.
Yeah, and better video.
Excellent, guys. Well, can you add Linux token? Is that Phil 1612? I guess that's a different algorithm. Yeah, hit the like button if you guys can, and we'll bring you back a episode here soon. I might actually have another episode tonight. I have a few things that we're rendering on the main Threadripper box. Follow us on Discord. Go into Discord. If you haven't done it, it's totally worth your time, especially if you're in the mining scene. There's a few other Discord communities out there. You can check out Vosk's. I'll shill everybody out there. iMineBlocks, all the other guys that are out there, you know, putting out some effort to educate and help people. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and we'll bring you guys an episode. And I still have a couple more things to send you guys from North American Bitcoin Conference out there, including, I believe we got the Ravencoin folks that were talking about Ravencoin out there. I'm going to try to get that one out for you guys tonight. So stay tuned, like, subscribe, share, follow, and we'll catch you guys later.
Rehost.
Yeah, there you go.